Hey, babe, what are we talking about today?
Today, we have our amazing Disney planner and travel agent and friend, Courtney Gibson, with us. We thought that it would be amazing to share her wealth of knowledge with our audience. I know so many of our listeners have families and kids around the same age as us or as our kids. And Disney is hot on everybody's mind because it's the most magical place on earth. But we also know that it's really expensive. And so we're going to get into all the details of Disney, how to do it right. Spoiler, hire Courtney, and go into some of the basic, or most commonly asked questions that people have around planning Disney, maybe Disney on a budget, and how to really make it a magical experience for your family. So, welcome, Courtney, to the Sugar Daddy podcast. We're so glad to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, of course. So, I'm going to get into your bio and then we'll get into your first money memory because that is how we start every episode with our guests. So, this way people know exactly who we're talking to. Courtney Gibson is a senior planner with Pixie Travel Company and Authorized Disney Vacation Planner. Her favorite thing to do is to travel and make memories with the people she loves, and she is passionate about planning stress-free vacations for her clients that allow them to do the same. So, Courtney, what is your first money memory?
I loved this question and getting to go kind of down memory lane. And when I thought about it, the first one I had was from my 5th birthday party. I had a father who, from a very young age, was trying to instill a lot of concepts of money, preparing my sister and I for the real world. So that was always a part of just everyday conversation. But for my 5th birthday party, he got this idea that there would not be party favors, that kids would just, get as they left the party. Instead, they had to earn those party favors. And so
Love
what
that.
he and my mom did was they set up a store with all of the party favors on a table, and everything was labeled with different amounts of money. So if you want a bouncy ball, it's 25 cents. If all the different things. Then
Mhm.
throughout the party, everybody played their games, musical chairs, whatever, and you were earning money. And at the end, you had to go to the shop to pay for your party favors. So,
That's
it was like,
incredible.
oh, hey, Johnny, you want that, little toy? Should have done better in musical chairs. So it was a
Oh
big
my God.
lesson for everybody. And that was a lot of his life. My life growing up was he was always looking for ways to engage us and make it fun, which I really appreciate that we had those funny experiences. I mentioned another one. He did a stock market game with us when we were very young. We chose like businesses that we could follow. Disney was one of mine, which is a little foreshadowing.
Love
Coca-Cola was
that.
the other. I don't remember the other two. And he had us track them in the newspaper. Every day we would have to get up. He'd made us notebooks. I think I was 8. My sister was 5. We had to track them. And if they went up, he would pay us at the end of the week. And you've never seen 2 little girls more invested in the stock market. So it was
Oh
great.
my gosh. I am obsessed with both of those stories. I love that he made your party guests pay for their party favors. I
Yeah,
love
he
that. I
did.
actually just saw something on Instagram very similar about Easter, and people putting dollar amounts in the Easter eggs, like little dollars, like you might have like a quarter or a dollar, like fake money. But then instead of every egg having a little toy, you would set up a store to say, okay, now you can come and buy this, this, and that with, whatever you got in your Easter egg. So I don't know, that might be something we're doing next year. But the stock market and then looking at the stock in the newspaper, right? I mean, that's
In the newspaper.
incredible. And then my other thought around that was, I mean, you don't control the stock. So you getting or not getting money based on how it performed is really interesting because you don't control that at all. But how incredible that he exposed you guys to that at such an early age, because they say you form your money habits around the age of 7. So how do you feel like
Well,
the
first,
oh yeah.
what did your dad do for a living?
Oh, good question.
So, so my dad was in publishing. I grew up in Nashville,
Oh.
and he was in the publishing industry.
Okay.
So nothing to do with money.
Oh,
or finance or
No,
like
now he did, later in life, he did get his MBA, and that was something he had always wanted to do, and as he sort of moved up in the publishing world, he took on more of a financial role, but in the beginning, it was not.
wow. So how do you feel like that impacted you from a young age? And like what obviously you remember this very vividly. So what do you feel like stuck with you and how has this helped shape you now that, you're a proper adult?
Right. I think probably the biggest thing overall was that we did not spend money we didn't have. So it was all about teaching us how to save, teaching us how to enjoy things within the money we had. From the time I was in middle school, my parents would give me an amount of money that was my clothing budget for the entire year. Part of that was so they didn't have to deal with the drama of, I want this, name brand shirt. But part of
Mhm.
that was from, that age, I was having to make decisions about, okay, here's the money I have. Now, where is it going to go? And I think now as an adult, that has benefited me as I have been in different professions that, have not necessarily always been rolling in the dough, always knowing how to live within our means. So that's been wildly beneficial as we see, other friends who maybe are falling prey to credit card debt and other things to have just learned from an early age how to stick with the money that you have.
no, I totally agree with that because I always tell Jess one of the biggest things that shaped how I view money was once we got to a certain age and we obviously knew that Santa Claus wasn't real. We get a few gifts here and there just to open up under the tree, but my mom would give us money. And then my brother and I like to buy clothes. So then instead of just buying us a bunch of clothes, she gave us a certain amount of money. And then we had to, determine how much we want to spend on different items. Do you want to buy this one shirt that's $50? Do you want to buy two shirts that are $25? And that's literally pretty much how like I still operate.
It's very much how you operate. Also, now we need to put a disclaimer in for anybody listening to this episode with their kids in the car because you just said like a really big thing.
I mean, I find it hard to believe that anybody's listening to this with kids in the car.
Well, okay, touche.
I can't listen to a podcast where I actually want to listen to with our kids in the car.
I know. All right. Well, I love those stories. I have one more follow-up question, then we'll get into all things Disney. When you had your birthday party and your dad set up the store, did the kids love it or were they like, why are we having to buy our goodie bag gifts for the end of the party?
In my memory, I remember them loving it. I know that I loved it. Like, I thought it was the greatest thing.
Oh,
And
that's
maybe
so
that's
good.
now the lens through which I'm like, yeah, everybody loved it. I don't know. They might have
Yeah.
gotten in the car and I'm like, that was the worst.
No, because going to the store is a whole nother experience, right? So even if it's like, oh, you didn't do well in musical chairs, so you can't get that bouncy ball. Like, that's part of the experience. Like, if you go to the arcade and you don't have the right amount of tickets, it's the same concept. So I love that. Shout out to Dad. That's fantastic.
That's right. Go, John.
Yeah. So, for anybody listening, a little background. Courtney and I actually met talking about not rolling in the dough. Courtney and I actually met while teaching middle school, and we've been friends ever since. That feels like literally a lifetime ago. I mean, we were, I wasn't married yet,
No, you
but we
were not.
definitely did not have children. And so now we have two, you have three. It's like we have a whole literally new lives. And then also new careers. So tell us about how I know you've had you've pivoted since teaching a couple of times, but what got you into this travel agency realm and what do you love about it?
Yeah. So out of teaching, I went to the literary side of publishing and was doing that, working from home. And then we just began when my daughter, who's now in middle school, when she was 3 and my youngest was 8 months, we started taking trips to Walt Disney World with my in-laws. And it was in that time of life when Hunter, now he's 8, but when he was, a baby, I was up, countless hours of the night nursing, being up with, he was our kid who would not sleep. And so during that time in preparation for this first big family trip, I was like deep diving into everything. The time that you don't normally have to maybe research all these things, I now had, from 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. with this person who didn't sleep. And so we had been to Disney previously. But we noticed this incredible difference on that first trip as a family with our two small children because I had put in literal hours and hours and hours of research. And we laughed throughout the trip. My husband Adam would say, "Oh my gosh, like who knew that these restaurants were so incredible? And how do you know?" And it was like, "Oh, because I did, all of this research and I've planned this out, the best trip." And so when we came back from that trip, we became sort of Disney evangelists, to our friends. It was like, "Did you know Walt Disney World can be awesome?" And
Hmm.
we had just been so surprised that this was not just a trip for our kids. We knew that my 3-year-old daughter was going to love it. She was at that just perfect age where, speaking of things we believe in and don't believe in, princesses were real. Mickey and Minnie are real, everything. And so there was obviously this magic of seeing her experience all of that on this first trip. And we laughed. She's very, very chatty, was back then as well. But with every princess, her mouth was just open, staring and couldn't say anything because just she was so speechless in the awe of the royalty.
Hmm.
Um, but what we were not prepared for was how much we enjoyed ourselves and how much it really felt like a vacation. And I think that that's something that maybe is still, if you're not kind of in the Disney world where people are talking about that, something people may not realize that it can actually be a really nice vacation. And so we came back and just with friends, I started telling them if I heard they were going, it was like, "Oh, well, let me help you, right? Let me help you tell you everything. Here's where we ate, and here's how you should structure your park days." And that just became something I was doing for friends, just for free. At the time, I did not even realize that was something that I could make a business out of. It was in 2021 that we had just gotten back from another trip, and a lot changed at Walt Disney World from 2020 to 2021. So even people who had gone before, now there was this new learning curve. All these terms, Genie Plus, early park entry, things they're thinking, what? What is this? What's the timeline? So I was meeting with other people, and I had this flexible job in publishing. But my husband, one evening, when he heard that I had met another friend, for lunch to walk her through her Disney trip, he was actually the one who said, "I bet you could actually make some money from this."
Leave it to
So that
Adam to
was
be
when
like,
I,
let's make some money,
that's right.
actually.
Like, if you're going to take time off your real paying job to go do this for free, let's see if we can turn this into a business. So that's how it started out. I signed on with Pixie Travel Co., which is an earmarked gold travel agency based out of Atlanta. And in the beginning, my thought was it was going to be something that I was doing on the side to my publishing job. Very quickly, it just snowballed into now it's my full-time job. And it is genuinely something that brings me so much joy. I never would have guessed, you just can't predict where life's going to take you, right?
Hmm.
That this is what I would be doing. But it is so fun to me to get to show families how they can enjoy Walt Disney World, Disneyland, Disney Cruise Line, regardless of what type of vacationer they are. With whatever their budget is, all of those things. I love being able to get to know my clients and then be able to plan a vacation that fits within how they like to travel.
Well, you are doing that beautifully. I will say that having, worked with you for the cruise that we went on in March, but I think what you said too, this goes back to something we say so often on the podcast, which is if you're looking for a side hustle, what are you already doing? What are you doing that is bringing you joy? What are your friends coming to you for help and advice? And that's exactly what you said, right? You were already doing it. You were meeting with friends over coffee. You were giving them your binders full of information and all the things. That's the perfect way to segue into something part-time or, to your case now, something full-time. So I think that's a great example too. Um,
One thing that I want to let everyone know, because this is obviously a financial literacy podcast, how much does it cost to work with you?
Good
This is
question.
the best part is it actually costs you no extra. And this is
Exactly.
probably, the biggest thing that people don't realize is that when you book any kind of vacation, your travel vendor, even just you mentioned Expedia, they are building in a travel agent's commission. So there's no catch
Mm.
to working with a travel agent. The catch is actually when you don't work with one. because
Because you're
then you're leaving all of
paying.
these services and this help on the table. So what happens
Mm,
is if you guys had booked your Disney cruise on your own, you would have paid exactly the same price as you paid when you booked it through me, but Disney just keeps that, the travel agent's commission. Whereas when you
oh,
work with a travel agent, you're actually helping a small business,
mhm.
you're supporting a friend, and you get all of these complimentary planning services that I'm able to offer because I'm getting that commission. So it's a really beautiful thing. And it made it a nice transition. It would have been difficult if all of a sudden my friends were coming to me and it's like, oh, I used to give this advice for free. Now I'm going to need you to
Right.
pay. But to be able to
Yeah.
still offer that. And actually, now because I'm not working my other job, I have even more time to give, create resources. And it's so wonderful. And it's my favorite thing to be able to share that there's literally no catch. You're leaving on the money on the table when you don't use a travel agent. And that goes for anything. So keep that in mind.
Yeah.
I must say, because as someone who does planning for a living, I don't plan any of our vacations. Zero.
No, he does not. I'll
I'm a
confirm.
vacation princess where I just show up and Jess has done everything. And in this scenario, luckily, a lot of the stuff was able to be done by Courtney, which took a lot of things off of Jess's table. And first thing I said when Jess, brought up was like, "Oh, how much does it cost?" She was like, "Zero." I was like, "Zero? Cool.
It's
Good
like,
to go."
that's my favorite price. Yeah.
Favorite number.
Yeah. So just in case anybody tuned out, it costs nothing to work with Courtney. And I will tell you, the value that she brings is
Yes, and
invaluable.
there are zero catches to this. This is
Right.
not some fee that's going to show up later on. It's absolutely costs you nothing out of pocket to work with her.
Yeah. But it will make your experience so much better. So we're going to get into that. Courtney, high level, what is a travel agent for anybody listening who has maybe never heard the term or has never worked with a travel
Or
agent?
thought that they're went extinct.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true too.
exactly.
Because there's
Right.
so many, you can do everything online yourself now. So yeah, that's a good call out.
And I think there has been a little shift. That is a great point. And you see a couple of terms interchangeably. You think about back in the day when you used to go to a physical travel agency, and now you are
Hmm.
thinking, wait, I don't need to do that. I'll just book it myself online. And so even though it's officially travel agent, you'll see a lot of times the terms travel planner. Because really, what a travel agent is now doing, and where I see is the value. Yes, they are helping you actually physically book the trip. If you do not book your trip through them, then they can't help you. Every once in a while, people will
Hmm.
hear, oh, travel agents are free. And so they'll book a trip on their own and then come to me wanting the services. And it's like, oh, no, I only get paid when you book the trip through me. So you do. But the first thing, a travel agent can do is actually help you narrow down a destination. If you're looking within Walt Disney World, narrowing down, okay, what resort, making those kind of maybe traditional things you think about in terms of booking on your own. But you have what I like to think of myself as a travel advocate of I'm getting to know you, your budget, your interests. And so even from the very beginning, working with you to help you make sure you're choosing the exact right resort, right vacation package. But that's really where my job starts. And so if you think, okay, I could do this on my own, I could book it online, you're absolutely right. What you're then missing out on is someone walking you through the whole process. And that's why I really like the term travel planner. That's the term that our agency chooses to use because we're walking you through every step. So, from handling payments, from keeping up with this is another one of my favorite parts. If a promotion comes out, if a sale comes out, we can retroactively apply that to your trip. You're not having to, keep up with all of that. And then depending on the type of trip, actually, booking dining for you, booking all of your experiences, things that go beyond that initial, okay, got it booked, flight, reservations, here we go. Following up all the way through when you're on your trip. Clients who are in the parks have access, to call me, text me, can give recommendations, walk them through everything. So it's really the entire time you have someone on your side who's a resource.
Yeah.
I could tell that it made like everything on our. So she helped us do our Disney cruise trip, and obviously, like I said before, I'm not really part of the planning process to begin with. But I can tell you that I saw a difference in how Jess was from a stress standpoint because everything that she would have done was offloaded off her shoulders, And as soon as we got there, from getting to the airport, getting there and everything like that, everything was taken care of and you didn't have to worry about anything. We knew exactly what to expect, and some, because there's just certain things that we didn't know, obviously, as first time people going on a Disney cruise, that was extremely helpful to have from Courtney.
Yeah. And what I will say, just to give everybody a background on how Courtney and I worked together, I basically said, I recognize for us, this is going to be a trip and not a vacation. A vacation to me, and I'm hoping this will change as our children get older, but right now, a vacation is me and Brandon, at a pool, at a resort, on a
Without the
beach
kids.
without the kids. A trip is, what we did for the Disney cruise, which was lovely. I cannot say enough good things about it. I did not feel completely, relaxed and rejuvenated coming back, but the joy in our children, absolutely made it worth it. But here's what I told.
But see, we also are fortunate enough that we are in a place financially where we can take our separate vacations and do our trips with our kids.
Yes.
So I want to preface that. We are fortunate and we understand that part.
Yes. So basically what I told Courtney is, this is going to be the first plane ride for the kids. They love sleeping in a hotel. I basically was like, I don't want to do a rental car. I don't want to do car seats. I don't want to pack anything except for clothes and sunscreen. I want this to be as easy as possible. How do we do that? And she was like, great, say less. We will, make sure that you fly in the day before. You'll stay at this hotel. You'll do all your registrations in the hotel lobby. You never have to leave. The hotel literally was attached to the airport. So again, you're not getting on a shuttle. You're not having to do Ubers and car seats. And I mean, it was seamless. Then we got on the charter bus from the hotel to the port. That was, such a great experience. And then within an hour, we were on the ship. It was great. We talked about budget, we talked about room size. And what's really excellent about working with a travel agent, but specifically Courtney, is that she's done all of these trips. And so when I said, hey, what do you think about this room? And I don't want to feel crowded. And, I want to have a little bit of space and a little bit of privacy once the kids go to bed. What room do we need? Boom, she had an answer, right? Is it worth it to get the balcony? She had an answer. Everything from that standpoint was spot on. I know I can trust her opinion. She booked all of our dining. We had perfect seats. Elsa was right in front of us. Anna was right in front. I reached out and touched Olaf as he, rolled by at our first dinner. In the Avengers room, Roman was able to give Spider-Man a high five. Like, we would have never been able to do those things without Courtney's help, because she knew where we needed to sit in the dining room.
And dining is assigned. You can't just sit anywhere.
Right. And so, these were really amazing things. And then, packing lists. What should we think about? Oh, the walls are magnetic. I had no idea. You can buy magnets and hang everything on the wall and create more space. And it was really, really fantastic. And yes, could you find this information out on your own? Sure. Can you follow other Disney planners on Instagram? Sure. But having access to somebody that you can set up an hour-long call with, which we did multiple times, is emailing you all of the really, really important information. Literally the hardest thing I had to do was upload all of our passport information and then read through her super, super, super comprehensive guide, which I did multiple times. That was the hardest thing. Everything else was handled by Courtney. And I know 100% our trip would not have been what it was without her. We had our grandparents come. One of the sets of grandparents came, and they also were like, this was the easiest thing. And this is a set of grandparents, I think in general, our grandparents, like, this could have been a very stressful thing, right? It's like going from the plane to the bus to the cruise ship. That's pretty overwhelming for people, who are in their 60s and 70s. And even they were like, wow, this was really amazing. So thank you to Courtney for all of that. And for anybody listening, do not miss out on her wealth of knowledge, because I really feel like you're at Disney every single week.
Yeah.
I mean, do you
between
even live at home
between
now?
running marathons at Disney and stuff.
I know you're doing all the Disney things. So it was perfect because of you, honestly.
Well, thank you. It was really fun to work with you and to get to know the grandparents. That's another favorite thing is when I'm working with multi-generational families, to get to know the whole family is a really fun element. And I love
So you
one
can
thing you
see where
said
we get
about,
our
of
crazy
course, you
from.
absolutely not. I loved everybody so much. I missed everybody. It's fun, when people will send me emails telling me, what were their highlights and favorite parts. It's always fun
Yeah,
to like predict what I think people are going to love and then to hear, their feedback. But when you were saying, you can go to all these other resources, and that's, I think, a great thing. There tend to be two types of people who come to me: people who don't want to do any of it or don't have the time to do any of it. Maybe in an ideal world they would, but
that's me.
they're very busy. And so it's like, can we hand this off? But then
Hmm.
there are also people who do love, still doing all of that research. And I've heard a misconception sometimes where people think, I don't want to use a travel planner because I want to do the research. I like doing all of that. And you still can. Absolutely. Sometimes I will have clients who have been on multiple Disney cruises or, gone to Disney World multiple times. But the beauty there is they don't want to get up at midnight to book their
Princess
activities and then have to
experience.
get
Yes.
that's right. And then get
Exactly.
up back at 6 a.m. to book their dining, or just to keep up with any changes or promotions they might miss that, leaves them money on the table. And so it is, I have a lot of clients who are more well versed or keep up with things, but they still choose to use me because there's no downside. You can still do the
Hmm.
deep dive as much as you want.
I mean, knowing what I know now, like there really is no downside because like I said before, like most of the time people's biggest hang up is an additional cost. There is no additional cost. So all you're getting is an additional resource.
More
And
value.
you can use it like you said there, you can use it as you see fit. I mean, for me, like obviously as a financial planner, you got to pay me like it comes out of your pocket. There's no other way to so there is that hurdle, but working with you that hurdle's not there. So I don't even understand like if people know of this once they know about this resource, why they would not. I mean, because like one of the biggest things that I love with working with you is how responsive you are. That's my biggest thing whenever I'm working with someone is how quickly do you get back with information that I asked about, and you always had an answer. If you didn't have an answer, you had it real quick. So it'd be crazy to me for, like I said, for someone to listen to this episode, know about it, have a Disney trip coming up, and not get you as a planner. It doesn't even make any sense.
Yeah. And I've even talked to friends and I'm like, did you spend the night at the hotel and then just take the shuttle? And like the friends have straight up been like, nope, because apparently we like to make our life difficult and didn't even know that was an option. And I mean, when I tell you the fact that we did not need to leave the airport to get to the hotel, which that was the best airport hotel I've ever been to.
Yeah, it
I
actually
mean,
was a nice hotel.
it was lovely. You had the food court right there for all the dinner and breakfast options, and I mean it was seamless. And to me, booking a rental car, making sure there's car seats, installing the car seats. I mean, going all the different places while you're schlepping your kids and all the luggage, and that to me stresses me out. Like I don't want to do that. And if there's an option to not, I'm going to take that every time. And I made that very clear to Courtney, and she was like, don't worry, we've got this. So, really just a wonderful experience. And to your point earlier, Court, how you were saying, if you don't want to get up at midnight because that's when yada yada opens, right, for booking, no, thank you. I do not want to get up at midnight. And the fact that you do this for your clients and you're up at midnight and up at 3 and up at 6 to make sure that we get the bookings and the excursions and the tables and the princess experiences and all the other things that I'm not even aware of. I mean, talk about concierge top notch service. I
Yeah, because
mean,
I'm
that
not doing
is
that for anybody. I'm asleep at 12.
same. So, I mean,
Oh,
that
and I
is
am on nights
fantastic.
that I'm not booking things.
Yeah.
And the thing is too is that you were speaking about how some people just love doing this, and they're like, oh, previously I wouldn't want to work with a travel planner because I enjoy doing this on my own. The reality is that you may enjoy doing it on your own, but you don't do it for a living, so you're not going to know everything. Like
Mhm.
with me, like obviously there's people out there that like to DIY their finances. That's great. You can DIY your finances all day, but if you don't do it for a living, I guarantee you I know some things that you don't know.
And you're going to miss something new coming out, like you said, Courtney, like promotions or discounts that yeah, if you're not tracking it, you're going to miss it.
And that's what I know. This applies, I think, to any field business. People don't know what they don't know, and that's something I say a lot. And I think another reason, to hire an expert in any field, right? But people
Yeah.
don't know what they don't know, so you might think you're doing the best option, but a travel planner can show you all of the options and to see if there's something that you missed that you didn't know was available.
Hmm. I see a lot of similarity between travel planning and financial advising
because
right
it
now,
has the word
actually.
planning in it.
No, but also just, yeah, like you don't know what you don't know. Sure, you can do it on your own, but is that really the best choice? Do you want to get a PhD in Disney? Because I certainly don't. So why not utilize the resource that is available to you? So let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is Disney ain't cheap. So if somebody listening is like, well, I don't have $7,000 to pay for this Disney trip, what would you say to that?
Yeah, I would say the good news is you don't need $7,000. If you come to me with a $7,000 budget, we could plan you a $7,000 trip, but Disney's actually a lot more affordable than people realize. And I think that's also one of the things that I love the most about my job is helping people take whatever their budget is and building their trip from there. I would say starting if you can have for family of four, $3,000, we can plan you a really nice trip. 2,000 depending on the time of year, but you can do it. Now that is staying at one of Disney's more budget friendly resorts. That's, maybe less park days. But I actually just had a returning client come to me and say, okay, they got the Disney bug. They thought this was going to be a once in a lifetime trip. And then literally the day they get back, they're like, we have to go back, which is something I see a lot. She said, okay, this isn't money that, we had saved. I'm trying to look at numbers. Could we do it for, under 2,000? And, that's the other great thing about working with a travel planner is I know what times of year are the most affordable. There's dynamic pricing with everything, both the tickets and the resorts. And so being able to know, okay, well, you certainly can't go over a school break for that price, but we were able to
Hmm.
look and find them a time actually over the summer for a family of four staying in an affordable value resort with 3-day park tickets. We had them at $1,800. Now, that's not going to
Wow.
be how everybody wants to do Walt Disney World, um, but it is possible. And so from there, what we can start looking at is what matters to you about this trip. And when people fill out, the first step when they work with me is filling out a free quote request form. And I have some questions on there where I want to know, okay, specifically about Walt Disney World. What's most important to you in a resort? Is it the price? Is it having the amenities? Because on the other end, you have deluxe resorts that you can even stay club level. Obviously, that's at a higher price point. So, what's important to you? Is it important to be, do you have young children? And one of the most important things is to be as close to the park as you can so that you can come back and forth for nap time. And so, then
Mm.
looking at, okay, if that's the priority, then what kind of budget do we need to look at? So it really depends, on what a family's the makeup of who is traveling, ages of the travelers, and then what they prioritize.
Mm.
I would say that th- I plan lots of trips for clients that are in the $5,000 range. So still probably more affordable than a lot of people imagine. And that's at a moderate or a deluxe resort. That's visiting all of the parks. There's even dining plan options. And so we can really look at what's important to you. Let's prioritize those things.
Mm.
Yeah, because I remember we were at one point in time we were planning a trip actually to Disney,
That
and
went south
that
real
went south
fast.
not because of Courtney,
No,
nothing
no,
at all to do with Courtney,
nothing to do
doing
with
to do with
Courtney.
family dynamics. But I do remember that you gave us that all those different options as far as from pricing standpoint and I guess level of quote
Hmm.
unquote luxury in regards to the rooms that we had options to. And I like that because like I said, like it really does help you fit into any budget that someone's looking for.
Yeah. Because at that point, we were talking about, having two sets of grandparents in not the room, but like, oh, could we do a suite? I basically was saying I would love to have laundry, right? So you can pack less and then throw in a load of laundry at night. I also loved the idea of, let's get there and let's do an Instacart order because we have a full kitchen, and that way we can, pack snacks and have our breakfast at the hotel or at the resort. And so we were talking through all those options, and one of the things that I loved is I basically said to Courtney, like, give us like the top tier, right? Like, give us the Escalade, the Rolls Royce, whatever. And then when that price came back, I was like, okay, let's go down to the Honda Accord. And but it was, you can work with her, and you can ask for all the things and then see what that comes back at, and tier back from there. But I think what you said about what's the most important, where do you want to be located? Are you traveling with a 10-year-old and a 2-year-old, right? Like, that is going to look very different than if you're traveling with a 6 and a 7-year-old. And I also loved what I remember us talking about. Certain resorts have different transportation to get to different parts. And you were saying, hey, when you take like the monorail or the sky rail, or I don't remember what it's called, that's an adventure in itself for young kids. Or you can take the ferry over, like, that's literally a boat ride. Like, kids love that. That's part of the adventure for that day. And, those are, again, were all things I had no idea about. I probably wouldn't have taken the time to research. I think ultimately,
I know I would not have.
well, yeah, that's a given. Obviously, we ended up on the Disney cruise, which I think was the perfect first option for Disney, for us. But yeah, I mean, you answered all the questions, you made it seamless. We gave you the budget, and we basically said, what can we do? And it was excellent.
And also, one thing I do want to also point out, because I think, like I said, once again, financial literacy podcast, aspects of money, there was a very gracious, if you planned the trip and for whatever reason you needed to cancel, there was a very gracious time period in regards to canceling the trip and receiving your money back. So
Yes.
there was also that option, which I like, because
And
sometimes you just don't know. Yeah,
well, and we
the Disney trip
used
we had to use, but with the Disney cruise, like, we knew we were going to go, but it gives you the options. Because I think a lot of people think about when they're planning trips and it's going to have that expense, that larger amount of money that you're paying towards it. What is the chances if something comes up, something happens, and I can't go?
Well, and my dad he was supposed to go and then had to back out because of some health issues, and there was no penalty, right? So I love the idea, especially when you're traveling with children. I mean, having an option to back out if needed without penalty, without losing your hard-earned money. I think that's fantastic too. So,
Yeah, and that's right. With the Disney cruise, it's typically, depending on the length of cruise, 90 or 120 days out. You have up until that point, when final payment is due, to get a full refund, even on your deposit. And then at that point, you can make the decision to add travel protection, which, gives you then even some more options inside of
mhm.
that time. With Walt Disney World, your final payment's not due until 30 days out. Deposit's
That's
fully refundable, and your deposit's only $200. So it's pretty low commitment. So, I tell
mhm.
people often, especially when looking at Walt Disney World or Disneyland, if you have an idea, like, we're booking right now through October 2025 at the time we're recording. And so it's like $200. Let's go ahead and book something. Let's, think further out for, what are you trying to save? And we can make payments along the way. And then if it doesn't pan out, you know, up until that 30-day mark, you get a full refund of that $200, or we can push out to a future date if you're not ready to travel then. And so that's one of my favorite elements as well, is that it's not, you're not having to pay so much money, up front, or you're locked into something that's so far in the future, you can't know if you're going to be able to do the trip or not.
Yeah.
Because people definitely have paralysis by analysis. I've seen it in financial planning, and I know people have issues with that when they're trying to book a trip further out. That they get so like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to make it. I don't know if I'm going to make it. I don't want to lose money, and then they just don't plan the trip. Where in this scenario, that takes away that hurdle.
Yeah. Well, and it gives you something to look forward to, which I know I'm always in a better mood when I have a trip coming up.
Yes.
But also from a budgeting standpoint, right? If you can say, hey, this is what we want the trip to look like in October 2025. I mean, I have more than a year to put $100 or $200 aside every month towards the trip, towards souvenirs, towards, whatever, again, is going to be important to you. And it just makes it so much more accessible to then have the trip that you've dreamed of for yourself and your family. So I love that. Okay, there's so many parks. Talk to us about which parks are best for which age groups. So maybe if we have listeners with kids under 5 and they could pick one or two parks, what would you recommend?
Yeah, so I love being able to do Disney World. We'll focus on Disney World since we're on the East Coast, but you have 4 parks: Magic Kingdom, Epcot, Hollywood Studios, and Animal Kingdom. And what I love is there's actually a park hopper option. So, one thing that I like to be able to do for clients is if they have that park hopper option, then we can kind of let you hop in and do the things that would be the highlights for your crew at each place. Because what you'll find
Mm,
is there are probably things at each park that your kids want to do or that you want to do. You know, there's some of the biggest attractions if you have roller coaster thrill fans at each park. But then when you have younger children and they love a particular character or movie, you know, then you want to make sure to hit those. In terms of just if you have young kids and height requirements, Magic Kingdom has the most attractions where there's no height requirement. Anyone can go on
mm,
them, even babies. Epcot is actually second, which surprises a lot of people because Epcot is also where you have the World Showcase. And, you know, it gets sort of a reputation for being more adult focused, which is not the case at all. I mean, it's wonderful for adults, great food, great drinks, great hang, but there are so many attractions. It's the only place to meet Elsa and Anna. So, you know, you've got some things where it's like, oh, we
oh,
have to go to Epcot.
yeah.
So I actually love being able to hit all of them. If you had young children, thrills are not, you know, a factor. Then I would, you know, probably say Magic Kingdom number one. I think it's important to be able to see the castle. It's a lot of the classic things you think of when you think of Walt Disney World, seeing the fireworks at night, the parade, you know, all of that magic. And then Epcot and then Animal Kingdom is really fantastic too. You have a lot of shows there as well, and also really great food. So I enjoy all of the food aspect as well.
I'm definitely a foodie, so.
You always laugh at me because I was trying to tell her I was fortunate that I went to Disney a lot, growing up. And I remember, and I don't think she had even been at a young age, but when I was a kid back, I want to say this is probably in the 80s when we went, there used to be a thing at the Magic Kingdom where it had like it was like a Michael Jackson themed movie called Captain EO, and it was in 3D. And she was like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "How do you not know what this
I
is?"
probably wasn't in the United States at that time, honestly.
But that was one of my like earliest memories of Disney is seeing Michael Jackson as Captain EO.
Does that ring a bell for you, Courtney?
It was a
Yeah,
great
there are
soundtrack
lots of funny
also.
things to remember. Like there was an Ellen DeGeneres attraction. Like there's been lots of, you know,
Oh,
Didn't
over
know
the
okay.
that.
years. When
I
we were
love that.
talking about ages too, one thing I wanted to mention from the financial aspect as well that some people don't realize, two kind of key things when you're thinking, okay, when should we take maybe that first trip? Children under age 3 are free. So you do not buy them a park
Mm.
ticket. When you go to meals, including character meals, which can be rather pricey, they are free. So they're getting to meet these characters and eat food for free.
Under
And so
3.
that's
Okay.
fantastic when you've
We missed
got, you
that.
know, a family. um, but
That
I
was our
always
fault,
say,
not
you know,
hers.
if you can catch that magical age where, you know, your child is maybe, you know, 2.5, creeping on 3, where they're into it, but they're free, then you really feel like, you know, this was a good deal. And actually, even if
Mm.
they turn 3 on the trip, as long as they are 2 at check-in, they're 2 the entire trip. It's Neverland. Time stops.
Oh,
So
that's
that's one.
amazing.
That's one kind of age to keep in mind. The other one is 10. On the bummer side, Disney adults start at age 10.
Uh,
Now, the
Mm.
ticket prices don't go up much. It's just about $10. So that's not a big deal. Where it gets you is with the food. So at all of the sit down restaurants, you have at places that have a set price, you have a child's price and an adult price. And so if you have I have an 11-year-old daughter, she would prefer to eat off of the kids' meal. Portion wise, that's about what she eats. but now we have to pay adult prices for her. So we
Mm,
shifted a little bit in how we thought through dining and the meals that she did once she turned 10 to make sure that we were still getting the best value. And there will be times still on the trip we just took last week for spring break where I took my youngest to a character meal because, for him, the magic is still there. And so he and I just went and did that special thing. So I was like, I'm not paying adult prices for my middle schooler to come. To come.
yeah. Oh, that's
So
good to
just some
know.
things to think about. And I work with my clients even on those decisions. And there are meals we have found since we've been going to Walt Disney World since our children were very little. Disney, the experiences grow with their kids. There has not come an age where my kids don't want to go. My middle schooler and I still do a trip every year for her birthday. She loves it. Those things have just shifted. Now they're not the character meals. Now we're doing tea parties, or she loves doing more of the kind of fancy, bougie little dining experiences. And so we look for the ones now where it's not a set price. We're ordering off a menu and I can make sure we're getting the value. And so those are even things that I'm trying to help my clients with. There's a dining plan. And so keeping some of those ages in mind on if you should use the dining plan, right? So it's a great deal if you have kids who are under 9 financially. The dining plan, you come out really great. Once you have multiple kids who are about 10 or 11, I always crunch the numbers for people. And sometimes based on the restaurants they want to go to, it's not the best deal. So it's all those things of,
Hmm.
you don't know what you don't know, and letting someone kind of do the work for you, and figuring out what the best value is.
Yeah, I'm all about letting you figure out what the best value is and not me figuring that out. Courtney, if you wanted to share anything, I mean, those last couple of gems about, under 3 and the dining plans and all of that, those are definitely key standouts that I think people should know. But if you could share one or two things that you want our listeners to leave with, what would those things be? It could be about the cruise or just in general working with you, whatever
Yeah.
you think you'd like to share.
I think my biggest thing is more of an overarching thing, which is another thing that I've learned as my kids are starting to get a little bit older, is just to take the trip, to prioritize it, take the time to make those memories. That really genuinely is one of my favorite things to do, and I don't see it as time wasted. I want to help you be able to do it in your budget. I don't want you to go into debt over this, but I want to create an experience for you that allows you to make these memories at whatever age your children are. And I think that whether it's a Disney cruise, the Disney parks, what I love about it is it gives you the opportunity to play with your children. And I think it brings something out in us. I would not actually say in life I'm like a super playful person, but there's something comes out in me, in Disney. And so taking the time to be able to do that, um, I want to encourage people to prioritize that. Even if you don't think that you're going to become a Disney adult or a family that goes every year, that's fine. Let me help you do it once, and do it in a way that makes sense for your family. On a more practical level, a question that I get asked a lot is when's the best time to travel, whether it be a Disney cruise or Walt Disney World. And so those are all things we can look at. Obviously, that shifts some based on if your children are in school, if they have days they can miss. Obviously, it's always more expensive and more crowded when school is out. The one exception to that is actually the summer. The summer has now actually become the low season on Disney World. So part of that is
It's
just you're
It's
seeing the
so
biggest
hot.
resort discounts, and that's actually 100%. It is hot. And so I do
Mm,
end up planning a lot of trips for people to Walt Disney World in the summer because the kids are not missing school and it's a really affordable time to go. There's a lot of resort promos, but we plan a different kind of trip because it is hot. So the good thing
mhm.
is
I
the
feel it in the
parks are
summertime.
open way longer. They open early in the morning. They stay open some days till 1 a.m., depending on if you're at a
Oh,
deluxe resort with extended hours in the evenings. So we plan a really nice trip where you're hitting the parks in the morning, coming back to your resort and enjoying the pools and all of the amenities during the day, and then going at night, when it cools down. But I love being able to work with clients on that. It might be that you're unsure when to go and you're looking at sort of that balance of, okay, we don't want our kids to miss more than a couple days of school, but we don't want it to go when it's the most crowded. or the most expensive, can you help with that? And those are all things, we're here to help with. And it's not necessarily the same for Disney World and Disney Cruise Line. So being able to help with both of those things and answering all of those, questions for people.
Courtney, where can people find you to help you plan their most magical experience?
Yeah, so I am on Instagram at Pixie Travel by Courtney, or you can send me an email at courtneyg@pixietravelco.com.
All right. And we will make sure to link all of that in our show notes so you can just click on it, make it easy. If you are planning a Disney vacation of any kind and you are not reaching out to Courtney, you are making a mistake.
You're making your life way more difficult.
Absolutely. And she can plan other vacations too. Like I took a girlfriend cruise last summer and we basically said, hey, this is what we want to do. Can you just book it for us? And she did that, so now we just want to make sure that she's getting her commissions because like she said at the beginning of the call, somebody's getting them anyway. So I'd rather them go to her. So reach out to Courtney for any of your travel needs, but definitely she is a Disney expert. Thank you so much, Courtney, for being with us today and for making this episode magical.
Thank you so much for having me.